Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm continuing my reading and review of The Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media and ways to listen to the show and support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. You can support the show through Patreon for as little as $1 a month and get all the extra content there, and or through the merchandise store. And I get T-shirts and sweatshirts and sling bags and aprons there with various designs on them. So special thanks to Sweets for providing some of those designs as well. And as always with these review shows, these reading and review shows, few things to keep in mind as I start here pretty soon. What I'm reading here is from Charles Fort, so the ideas and thoughts you hear are his and may not align with our own. Also, there may be some things that are discussed that seemed anomalous at the time when these books were published, which is in the early 1900s. That have been since sort of figured out, at least in general, since then. So if anything sounds like that to you, that's why. Also, keep in mind I will make mistakes in reading and in pronunciation of names and places, especially since some of these are in other languages. And I don't know how to speak any other language except for English, and barely that one. I'm joking somewhat, but also not really. But anyway, let's get back to the material here and see where this goes. It says Menier, not sure, tells of another thunderstone said to have fallen in North Africa. Munir, not sure how you say that, Meunier, too, is a little lamentable here. He quotes a soldier of experience that such objects fall most frequently in the deserts of Africa. Rather miscellaneous now. Thunderstones said to have fallen in London, April 1876. Weight about 8 pounds. No particulars as to shape. In parentheses, Tim's Yearbook 1877-246, close parentheses. Thunderstone said to have fallen at Cardiff, September 26, 1916. London Times. Excuse me. September 28, 1916. According to Nature 98-95, it was coincidence. Only a lightning flash had been seen. Stone that fell in a storm near St. Albans, England, accepted by the Museum of St. Albans, said at the British Museum not to be of true meteoritic material. Nature 80-34. London Times, April 26, 1876. That April 20th, 1876, near Wolverhampton, fell a mass of meteoritic iron during a heavy fall of rain. An account of this phenomenon in Nature 14-272 by H.S. Maskelyne, who accepts it as authentic. Also see Nature 13-531. For 3 other instances, see the Scientific American 47-194, 52-83, 68-325. Now these are all references to objects, to these stones falling from the sky, possibly. So that's what he's talking about here. These aren't just numbers. These are actual places where if you were to look up these publications, you could find these reports of these objects. As to wedge-shaped larger than could very well be called an axe. Nature 30-300. That May 27th, 1884, at Tysnes, Norway, a meteorite had fallen, that the turf was torn up at the spot where the object had been supposed to have fallen, that 2 days later, a very peculiar stone was found near by, the description is in, that's a missing word there, found nearby, I'm sorry. If I could learn to read, that'd be good. The description is in shape and size very like the fourth part of a large Stilton cheese. Not sure what that means. Maybe like a pie, like a circular-shaped thing. Yeah, that seems like that's probably logical there. I don't know for sure, though. It is our acceptance that many objects and different substances have been brought down by atmospheric disturbance from what, only as a matter of convenience now, and until we have more data, we call the Serpu Sargasso Sea. However, our chief interest is in objects that have been shaped by means similar to human handicraft. Description of the thunderstones of Burma. Asiatic Society of Bengal, 1869-183. Said to be of a kind of stone unlike any other found in Burma, called thunderbolts by the natives. I think there's a good deal of meaning in such expressions as unlike any other found in Burma, but that if they had said anything more definite, there would have been unpleasant consequences to writers in the 19th century. More about the thunderstones of Burma in the Society of Antiquity of London, 2-3-97. One of them, described as an ADZE, AIDS, was exhibited by Captain Duff, who wrote that there was no stone like it in its neighborhood. Of course, it may not be very convincing to say that because a stone is unlike neighboring stones, they had foreign origin. Also, we fear it is a kind of plagiarism. We got it from the geologists who demonstrate by this reasoning the foreign origin of erratics. We fear we're a little gross and scientific at times. But it's my acceptance that a great deal of scientific literature must be read between the lines. It's not everyone who has the lament ableness of a Sir John Evans. Just as a great deal of Voltaire's meaning was interlinear, we suspect that a Captain Duff merely hints rather than to risk having a Professor Lawrence Smith fly at him and call him a half-insane man. Whatever Captain Duff's meaning may have been, and whether he smiled like a Voltaire when he wrote it, Captain Duff writes of the extremely soft nature of the stone, rendering it equally useless as an offensive or defensive weapon. Story by a correspondent in Nature 34-53 of a Malay of considerable social standing. And one thing about our data is that damned though they may, though they, damned though they be, they do so often bring us into awful good company. Who knew of a tree that had been struck about a month before by something in a thunderstorm? He searched among the roots of this tree and found a thunderstone. Not said whether he jumped or leaped to the conclusion that it had fallen. Process likely to be more leisurely in tropical countries. Also, I'm afraid his way of reasoning was not very original. Just so were fragments of the Bath furnace meteorite accepted by orthodoxy discovered. We shall now have an unusual experience. We shall read of some reports of extraordinary circumstances that were investigated by a man of science. Not, of course, that they were really investigated by him, but that his phenomena occupied a position approximating higher to real investigation than to utter neglect. Over and over we read of extraordinary occurrences. No discussion, not even a comment afterward findable. Mere mention occasionally. Burial and damnation. The extraordinary and how quickly it is hidden away. Burial and damnation, or the obscurity of the conspicuous. We did read of a man who, in the matter of snails, did travel some distance to assure himself of something that he had suspected in advance. And we remember Professor Hitchcock, who had only to smite Amherst with the wand of his botanical knowledge. And lo, two fungi, sprang up before night. And we did read of Dr. Gray and his thousands of fishes from one pailful of water. But these instances stand out. More frequently, there was no investigation. We now have a good many reported occurrences that were investigated. Of things said to have fallen from the sky, we make, in the usual scientific way, two divisions: miscellaneous objects and substance, and symmetric objects, attributable to beings like human beings, subdividing into wedges, spheres, and disks. Journal of the Royal Meteorological Society, 14-207. That July 2nd, 1866, a correspondent to a London newspaper wrote that something had fallen from the sky during a thunderstorm of June 30th, 1866, at Notting Hill. Mr. G.T. Simmons of Simmons Meteorological Magazine investigated about as fairly and with about as unprejudiced a mind as anything ever has been investigated. He says that the object was nothing but a lump of coal, that next door to the home of the correspondent, coal had been loaded the day before. With the uncanny wisdom of the stranger upon unfamiliar ground that we have noted before, Mr. Simmons saw that the coal reported to have fallen from the sky, and the coal unloaded more prosaically the day before, were identical. Persons in the neighborhood unable to make this simple identification, had bought from the correspondent pieces of the object reported to have fallen from the sky. As to credulity, I know of no limits for it. But when it comes to paying out money for credulity, oh, no standards to judge by, of course. Just the same. The trouble with efficiency is that it will merge away into excess, with what seems to me to be super abundance of convincingness. Mr. Simmons then lugs another character into his little comedy. That it was all a hoax by a chemist's pupil who had filled a capsule with an explosive and, during the storm, had thrown the burning mass into the gutter, so making an artificial thunderbolt. Or even Shakespeare, with all his inartistry, did not lug in King Lear to make Hamlet complete. Whether I'm lugging in something that has no special meaning myself or not, I find that the storm of June 30th, 1866 was peculiar. It was described in the London Times, July 2nd, 1866, that during the storm, the sky in many places remained partially clear, while hail and rain were falling. That may have more meaning that when we take up the possible extra-mundane origin of some hailstones, especially if they fall from a cloudless sky. Mere suggestion, not worth much, that there may have been falls of extra-mundane substances in London, June 30th, 1866. Clinkers said to have fallen during a storm at Kilburn, July 15th, 1877. According to the Kilburn Times, July 7th, 1877, quoted by Mr. Simmons, a street had been literally strewn during the storm with a mass of clinkers estimated at about 2 bushels, sizes from that of a walnut to that of a man's hand. Pieces of the clinkers can be seen at the Kilburn Times office. If these clinkers, or cinders, were refuse from one of the super mercantile constructions from which coke and coal and ashes occasionally fall to this earth, or rather to the super Sargasso Sea, from which dislodgement by tempests occurs, it is intermediatistic to accept that they must merge away somewhere with local phenomena of the scene of precipitation. If a red-hot stove should drop from a cloud into Broadway, someone would find that at about the time of the occurrence, a moving van had passed, and that the moving men had tired of the stove, or something, that it had not been really red hot, but had been rouged instead of blacked by some absent-minded housekeeper. Compared with some of the scientific explanations that we have encountered, there's considerable restraint, I think, in that one. Mr. Simmons learned that in the same street, he emphasizes that it was a short street, there was a fire engine station. I had such an impression of him hustling and bustling around at Notting Hill, searching cellars until he found one with newly arrived coal in it. Ringing doorbells, exciting a whole neighborhood, calling up to second-story windows, stopping people in the streets, hotter and hotter on the trail of a wretched impostor of a chemist's pupil. After his efficiency at Notting Hill, we'd expect to hear that he went to the station and something like this. It is said that clinkers fell in your street at about 10 minutes past 4 o'clock, afternoon of July 5th. Will you look over your records and tell me where your engine was at about 10 minutes past 4, July 5th? Mr. Simmons says, I think that most probably they had been raked out of the steam fire engine. June 20th, 1880. It was reported that a thunderstone had struck the house at 180 Oakley Street, Chelsea, falling down the chimney into the kitchen grate. Mr. Simmons investigated. He describes the thunderstone as an agglomeration of brick, soot, unburned coal, and cinder. He says that, in his opinion, lightning had flashed down the chimney and had fused some of the brick of it. He does think it remarkable that the lightning did not then scatter the contents of the grate, which were disturbed only as if a heavy body had fallen. If we admit that climbing up the chimney to find out is too rigorous a requirement for a man who may have been large, dignified, and subject to expansions, the only unreasonableness we find in what he says, as judged by our more modern outlook, is, I suppose that no one would suggest that bricks are manufactured in the atmosphere. And let me see here. This paragraph, next one here, is pretty long. So, yeah, we'll stop there for now. But, yeah, so this has been really amazing so far, just hearing about all these objects. It reminds me a lot, if I'm reading this right, of how, and really it goes back to something I've talked about before in this show, the idea of proof, that everyone is going to have different ideas of what proof is and what evidence is and all these things, and those can change for a person from one point of time to another. And yeah, it seems like you might be talking about that there in this book, which came out way before I was ever born. So, and then the objects again, the stones falling from the sky, really is amazing. I'm looking forward to more of that. But yeah, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.